Hey everybody, welcome back to Sweatpants BI for another edition of my BI book club. And for this month's book review, we're going in a slightly different direction. We're not going to be talking about a book that is specifically focused on business intelligence or data visualization or even analytics or data in general. We're going to be talking about Chatter by Ethan Kross, the voice in our head, why it matters, and how to harness it. And the reason that I picked this book instead of another data visualization book is, BI, data science, analytics jobs, it can be very, very high stress. I've worked with a lot of people who have been undone at times by the stress in our occupation. And I've struggled with it many times myself. I tell people all the time that, despite the fact that I work really hard in business intelligence, and I've sort of built myself up to being a Power BI professional, and have worked through the last decade to a point in my career where I mentor tons of other people on Power BI and business intelligence, I still go through, almost crippling moments of self-doubt on a regular basis. At least once or twice a year, the voice in my head literally becomes so strong that I doubt myself so much that I even think about leaving business intelligence and Power BI behind. This is a high-stress job. People that work in these fields, we constantly have analytics challenges put on our plate that other people in the company deem too hard to solve, so they came to us. We have tight deadlines. We have challenges with accessing data and manipulating data and performing calculations that put a lot of stress on us as developers. This is not an easy job. That's why the salaries and the paychecks tend to be really, really good. That's why, one of the most satisfying things about working in BI and data are the challenges and the constant obstacles that we have to find unique and creative and data-driven ways to get past. But, inherent in that kind of work, there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of moments of self-doubt. There's a lot of moments, when that I've observed others and have experienced myself where you're, asking yourself, am I up to this, or do I really want to do this? Maybe you're someone who's really engaged with social media or LinkedIn, Facebook or something, and you're seeing other professionals and you're thinking, I'm never going to be able to live up to the bar that they're setting. I know I'm not as good as all of these people. My work sucks. Maybe I've chosen the wrong line of work. And especially if you're someone who is looking for a new business intelligence or data science or analytics job, that in and of itself can be extremely high pressure. That in and of itself can set you up for, really profound, crippling moments of self-doubt and thinking that you're not worthy. And it can really give sort of that voice or that internal monologue inside of your head the license to become really negative and pessimistic and start to dominate your own internal narrative. So I thought that a book like Chatter would be really, really helpful for people that work in this line of work to give you a resource that I think is just a really excellent, pretty quick read that introduces you to some tools that you can use to sort of keep that inner voice or that sort of negative monologue that appears from time to time in all of us. Gives it a means to sort of control that, or at least turn that voice into something more productive, which is what really, really appealed to me about this book. Before we continue, maybe just a few words about the author. Ethan Kross is the director and founder of the Emotion and Self-Control Laboratory at the University of Michigan, has a PhD in psychology from Columbia University, very, very impressive. Dr. Kross is considered one of the world's leading experts on controlling the conscious mind, which of course, makes perfect sense for a book like Chatter because, as I said, it can be really exhausting and detrimental to our own mental health when we allow that sort of negative monologue that we all experience from time to time to sort of run amok. And so, this book is focused on, like I said, providing you with the tools that you need to sort of narrow or control or manipulate or refocus that monologue into something more productive. His book Chatter has won all kinds of awards since it came out in 2021, is available in multiple languages, and I think at the time that it was released, received numerous sort of book of the year acclaim. One other interesting thing about Dr. Kross that I found was impressive is that the CV that he has available on his website is 34 pages long. I don't want any of you watching this channel to get any ideas. I'm still a big advocate that if you are someone who's looking for a BI or analytics job, your resume or CV probably needs to be about 3 to 5 pages. At 34 pages, I honestly think that Dr. Kross's CV probably would have taken me longer to get through than his book Chatter, which is a pretty breezy read. But still, 34 pages, nevertheless, very, very impressive. And just a reminder, you are not Dr. Ethan Kross. If you're a BI professional, maybe just like 3 to 5 pages is probably enough. I'll go ahead and kick off the rest of my discussion about Chatter with just like one quote that really spoke to me from the book, and that is, however it manifests itself, when the inner voice runs amok and chatter takes the mental microphone, our mind not only torments us, but paralyzes us. It can also lead us to do things that sabotage us. And this really, spoke to me. As someone who is definitely, sort of, especially using this book, I think I've become a little bit better of sort of recognizing that inner voice, and especially when it goes negative, it does really feel like it's wrestling the microphone away from some of the more positive and productive thoughts that I would rather my brain be sort of focusing on. It's easy for all of us when the pessimism or negativism or self-doubt sort of creeps in. It does feel like that voice kind of steals the microphone, and that becomes the dominating, thought process in our minds. It does feel like it speaks louder than all of the other voices at times. It can cause you to sort of spiral. Here I'm, really, really speaking to some of the people who have reached out to me about, how hard it's been finding their first BI or analytics job, and all the negativity and sort of doubt that has creeped in with, being constantly rejected by different companies that they're applying for, not hearing back, and sort of feeling that sense of hopelessness and that sense of despair that can kind of spiral. So, I do definitely empathize with this quote. I think that's exactly how it feels, to have those negative emotions kind of drowning out all of the thoughts that you may recognize rationally are that are more positive, that would be more productive, but you just can't get out of your own way, so to speak. It's a perfect example of us kind of living in our own heads. And, as the other, sort of downside to this that I've experienced in my own career, and unfortunately is, kind of bitten me from time to time over the past decade of my career, is that sometimes that negative energy definitely causes us to do things that are counterproductive or that ultimately can sabotage us in the long run. So I think he does a really, really good job of sort of summarizing with this quote, the damage that inner voice can do to our psyche and to, sort of our, relationships and our activities and our habits, both in our personal life and in our work life. And, this is really, one of the key themes of the book Chatter is that our inner voice plays a really important role in helping us form our sense of identity, who we are, and sort of pointing us towards our goals and objectives. So it can definitely help us, but as I've mentioned numerous times already, it can also run amok. And this is where we start to fall into these sort of anxious, negative, pessimistic patterns. And over time, these sort of patterns of thinking that can kind of become our default state if we're not very careful. And, I feel like this is a really, really important thing to think about for aspiring data professionals, is because one study found, according to Dr. Kross, is anxiety leads people to make lower initial offers, exit discussions early, and ultimately earn less money. So, it just really kind of underlines the importance within the context of his work of sort of managing this doubt and managing these negative voices. And something else that, I'm always very mindful of someone who, is married and someone who has a team that works under me, is that these types of thought patterns can also harm our relationships because they put our negative emotions at the center of our relationships. My relationship with my wife wouldn't be as productive if, the negative chatter that I experience was always front and center. And if, instead of enjoying really, positive and, sort of life affirming moments with my spouse, if all I did was constantly complain or try to use Nina to, solve my, existential, crises or my work problems or, other things in my life that I'm not happy about, if that was always front and center in our relationship, that wouldn't make for a very positive dynamic between my wife and myself. So, one reason that this book was important to me is, I've gone through some rough patches of burnout and doubting and wondering whether or not I really want to continue my business intelligence career. And this book has been, really helpful in sort of offering advice and ways for me to recognize when I'm falling into those thought patterns. Also, kind of gives me things to think about, in terms of my relationships and what I choose to share with different people and where I seek out help in sort of dealing with those problems. And of course, there are a lot of tools that are in this book. I don't want to give everything away. I really would rather that you read the book instead of me just giving you all of the solutions. But I will touch on a few of the tools in Dr. Kross's toolkit that I thought worked for me here in just a few moments. A couple of additional themes that resonated with me were a little bit more on the surprising, like I've never thought of this side. And one of them is this idea of sort of creating distance between yourself and your inner voice when it goes rogue. And one idea that's proposed is sort of conceptualizing yourself not in the first person, these things are happening to me, but in the third person, like these things are happening to Sean in my case. And this might sound kind of silly and felt a little bit corny to me when I was going through some of the exercises, but even describing some of these negative or stressful or high anxiety or high pressure things that are happening to you or to me, and literally just sort of reframing these things as happening to this third person, even that is just enough distance to sort of recontextualize, reframe some of these things and make them not feel like they're quite as big of a hurdle or obstacle to overcome. And another thing that I feel like is maybe a little bit more easy to grasp is this idea of, sort of taking an event that is happening to you, something that might feel very high pressure, or that something that might be, causing your self-doubt to creep in, and imagine the importance or significance of this event 10 years from now as opposed to tomorrow. A lot of the things that cause us pressure and anxiety, and this has definitely felt true to me, they may feel like they're the most important and critical things in the universe happening right now in this moment, or at the very least in the short term. But ultimately, when you try to reframe them and ask yourself how you're going to feel about these things 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, they start to look a lot smaller or more trivial on the horizon of that longer time frame. Another thing that Dr. Kross brings up that for me was a really, really provocative thing to say is that talking to others about how we feel can backfire. Some of the points that he makes is that, when we talk about negative emotions with other people, especially people who maybe aren't equipped to help us process those negative emotions, can really just cause them to sort of say, yeah, and maybe ask you to share more and more and more, and really they're just sort of pouring this, gasoline on top of the fire that you're feeling, and it can cause this sort of cascade of emotions. So it's important that we learn to be deliberate with whom we have different conversations about our inner voice. You may have a sibling or a parent that is better equipped to deal with some of your life problems. A spouse may be better equipped to deal with other life problems, especially if they're shared problems. Your boss or a colleague might be better equipped to deal with problems in the workplace. At the end of the day, we want to find the people in our lives who are most equipped to help us deal with different types of stress and anxiety. Sometimes, of course, this could even be a third person, like going and talking to a licensed therapist or going to talk to a professional, in some capacity. Another quote from the book that really resonated with me was, "As much as it can hurt, the ability to experience fear, anxiety, anger, and other forms of distress is quite useful in small doses. These things mobilize us to respond effectively to changes in our environment." I think that it's easy, for me to talk about this book and just dwell on the negative side of anxiety and pressure and the emotions that these create in us, and act like that inner voice that I've talked about so much in this review is something that we need to turn off. When in my own experience, I will also say, that some aspects of this anxiety and uncertainty have also been very beneficial to me in my own career. It's some aspects of this internal monologue have made me work harder than some of my peers on projects. They've promoted me to go back and, review, double check, triple check, my numbers and instances to make sure that they're absolutely accurate, which in some cases has also helped me find mistakes in my Power BI tools. They've sometimes these things propel me to want to put just that little extra polish into everything that I do in order to set myself up for success. So I don't want to act like this inner voice isn't always something completely negative that we need to turn off. I think the real theme of the book is learning how to sort of control that narrative and distill it into something that is not overwhelming, something that can actually help you, and something that you can put to work for you. But I think it really is, this quote was worth sort of calling out that fear, anxiety, anger, and other forms of distress, they are a part of life. They can be very profound motivators. It's just important that we as professionals learn how to sort of control and turn these things into emotions that don't sabotage us in the long run. So, these are among my takeaways for analytics professionals. Like I said, the goal is not to silence your inner voice. It's just to turn it into something useful. And, in my own experience, and if you're someone who has gone through, a lot of these emotions, and if this book review is really resonating with you, then you already know chronic self-doubt and negativity is exhausting. Things that our inner voice makes sound like catastrophes, they often end up, not being nearly as big a deal in the bigger picture. They end up not being, really anything more than trivial, in hindsight. Another quote from the book that I'm just going to sneak in here is that when we're upset, we tend to over-focus on receiving empathy rather than finding practical solutions. All of this just kind of underscores this theme of, not just dwelling on the emotions, but trying to identify the root of the emotions and maybe working with others in your life who support you to figure out, creative solutions or ways to get sort of past these emotions, so that you're not falling into these patterns or spirals of, negativity and self-doubt. And another thing that, I've kind of flirted with, I'll be honest, I'm not good at this, but rituals can also have a profound importance. The rituals that I've attempted to sort of adopt over the past couple of years that I don't always do the best job at and often find myself sort of falling out of them for weeks or months at a time. I've tried yoga, I've tried meditation, and they've worked for me. Like I said, the main thing for me is just not getting so overwhelmed by work that I fall out of those patterns. It does happen to me all the time, but I do try to make sure that, eventually I kind of find my way back to yoga and meditation. Those have been really helpful rituals for me. The one ritual that I have in my own life that I don't let go of is, every single day during the work week, I do try to find at least 30 to 60 minutes a day for exercise, whether it be weightlifting or running outside. One of the other tools that Dr. Kross sort of brings up is the importance of getting exposure to green spaces, getting outside, going for walks, maybe wherever you can. I'm a big fan of like city parks and national parks that are just a little bit harder for me to get to. But yeah, going for walks in nature is a huge de-stressor for me that we're pretty much wired as human beings to experience and get that fresh air and get that exposure to green spaces. Another some of the other tools that are just a sample of the things that Kross talks about in his book are to minimize passive social media use. As someone who is pretty active on LinkedIn and also uses Instagram every now and then. I don't use Facebook, but I do use Instagram. It can be really easy to sort of fall into those negative patterns or sort of doom scroll, as they say on LinkedIn. One of the things that really stands out to me is that I'm constantly exposed to people that are way better than I am at Power BI, who are way smarter than I am, who are doing things that are amazing that I wish that I could do. That I get down on myself because I'm like, man, I would love to learn that skill set if I just had time, and then I don't do it, and I start to get down on myself. So like social media can be a really, really big sort of trigger for a lot of people, especially job hunters who are, getting frustrated with maybe not hearing back from recruiters or not hearing back from hiring managers. And then you're seeing other people, post their successes that, oh, I just got some amazing certification, or I just got some internship, or I'm starting a new job, or I just got promoted. And, it's sort of this, this vacuum or bubble where people are celebrating their accomplishments, and it seems like it's completely external to you, and you start to wonder, why am I not succeeding while all of these other people are? And, it can sort of, you sort of lose that context, and it's easy to fall into those spirals when you're just constantly sort of, passively scrolling social media instead of using it as a specific tool for a specific end. Another thing that has worked for me when I'm feeling super stressed is just creating order in my environment. Over a span of 3 to 6 months, usually my office and my desk will start to become a little untidy. I love to go through an exercise about once or twice a year where I'll just completely overhaul my office or do something to really sort of change my environment. Most recently, it was painting my office and going with this nice kind of calming green that you see in the background that was not present in some of the older videos from a few months ago. But just creating that sort of order in your environment just gives you a better, stronger sense of control. For me, working remote day in, day out, and kind of doing some of the same activities can make life feel really, really monotonous. There have been times that I've loved working remote. There have been times when I have hated working remote. But sort of taking ownership of my environment and, making some changes to my office kind of allows me to hit refresh. And sort of allows my workspace and my day-to-day routines to sort of feel brand new, which can be really, really good for sort of resetting my thought patterns. This is just something that works for me, and something that Dr. Kross goes into in a little bit more detail in his book. Another thing that you'll come across, I've probably read 5 or 6 other books sort of focused on, similar topics, about kind of managing your stress and your internal monologue. And something else that is really important is this idea of practicing reframing. And reframing is just, literally sort of approaching a problem or a stressor from a different angle. If you're feeling particularly stressed out about like maybe a new work assignment, you can take it as not something to cause you stress, but as a challenge to maybe learn or practice a new skill, something that you think is ultimately going to make you stronger or better off in the long run. If you are very, very struggled in your job search and you're getting interviews, but maybe you're not getting that final call for a job, and a way to reframe that might be that at least you're getting the interview practice. You're getting that public speaking practice. You're getting to identify, in those meetings and in those panel interviews, maybe what your weaknesses are, and that tells you what you need to go back and study and spend a little bit more time, focusing on. So you can kind of reframe those as, I didn't lose the job. I learned something about myself that I was missing, that all I have to do is fix this, and I think I'll have better luck in future interviews. So just learning how to reframe some of those problems that we all have can be really, really important for helping us manage that negativity and pessimism that we all feel. Which is why I really think that this book is very, very useful for anyone who struggles with self-doubt, has ever felt exhausted, sort of wrestling with their internal monologue, anyone that's just felt stuck in their own head, which happens to me. I'm sure that it happens to you. I'm sure it happens to 99.9% of people. So this book, is not something that I, plan to really talk about in these book reviews, but I read this book and I just thought that it really resonated with what I'm hearing from people that are reaching out to me about how frustrating the job market is, people that are reaching out to me about, I'm not really necessarily sure that analytics is what I want to do forever. There are some things about, this career that I love. There are some things about it that frustrate me or that cause me a lot of pressure. And that's why I thought that this book would be very, very useful for almost anyone that is working in or thinking about an analytics career, because there are always going to be moments of high stress in almost any career that we could choose. And there are always going to be periods where we all go through anxiety or doubt ourselves and wish that we could just, flip a switch and turn off that negative monologue that we all experience from time to time. So I highly recommend that you give out Chatter by Dr. Ethan Kross. a check. I think it's maybe about 150 pages, most of it. You can read it relatively fast, even if you're a slow reader like me. And I do think that it has a lot of really valuable advice that honestly, I could see somebody coming back and revisiting this book on an annual basis. I'm already trying to make time in my calendar to read it again so that I can kind of process and absorb everything a little bit better than I did probably rushing through it the first time for this book review. So that's been another BI Book Club review. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you did, feel free to like or even subscribe to the Sweatpants BI channel, and I'll be back next month with another BI Book Club review. Thank you, everybody.